HTC's done well to make a name for itself in the smartphone market over the last couple of years, and that's mostly thanks to its One series. HTC leads the way when it comes to build materials and quality, but it's in the mid-range or budget end of the market that I find actually they're doing more interesting things. Last year I checked out the HTC Desire 816, and this year I have my hands on its follow-up, the 820. And again, like I did with the 816, I'm finding myself quite pleased with it. Sure, it's not perfect, it's a little rough around the edges, but for the price point and initial outlay of under $400 or £300 in the UK, you do get a lot for your money. Whichever way you look at it, the HTC Desire 820's looks are striking. The glossy white plastic model perfectly contrasts the brightly coloured accents around the edges, buttons and camera lens. But it's almost impossible to get away from the fact that this is definitely plastic. It's shiny to the eye and slippery to the touch, not at all helped by the slightly rounded edges on the back. Saying that, the unibody design is generally solid. The only part that feels slightly flimsy is the flap for covering the SIM and microSD card slots on the left-hand edge. As is typical for HTC, the bezels are positively ginormous. There's more than a thumb's width between the bottom edge of the screen and the phone's chin, but there is real purpose for this gap. HTC's boom sound stereo speakers, which, as usual, are covered by a row of individually micro-machined holes. The power sleep button is placed thoughtfully on the right-hand edge just below the volume rocker. Both click subtly, giving just the right amount of feedback when pressed. Both are also easy to reach. And at 7.7mm thick, it's not the thinnest smartphone on the planet, but it's not far off. It feels really slim in hand, and although it's too wide and too tall to be comfortable in a single hand, it has a great large two-handed feel. Apart from the huge bezels, it's the 5.5-inch screen that makes this such a large device. It's an LCD panel boasting a resolution of 720 by 1280 pixels, or 267 pixels per inch. Being LCD, colours are quite accurate, if not ever so slightly cool. And after you get over the fact that it's not as pixel dense, as sharp, or as high contrast as some flagship devices, you realise this is, in fact, a pretty great panel. Viewing angles are good, and aside from the usual slight dip in brightness when looking at it from an angle, there are no real complaints. It still provides a great experience for anyone wanting to watch movies or get their gaming fingers busy on the move. Although it doesn't have the deep blacks of AMOLED, its contrast is still high enough to offer pleasing viewing. Sharpness is the only real downfall of the screen, but even that isn't terrible. Hold it close and you'll see some rough edges around lettering. Hold it at arm's length and all you see is the content on the screen. And on to performance and battery life, and HTC's opted for an unusual processor setup with the Desire 820. Instead of the traditional quad-core Snapdragon 400 or 800 series processors often used, the 820 features a Snapdragon 615 chip made of two quad-core chips. Its 1.5 GHz quad-core added to a 1.0 GHz processor, and the results are a little inconclusive. Sometimes the phone performs brilliantly, swiftly sliding through screens and in between apps without any trouble. Other times there's a noticeable delay between a gesture and a response, or loading web pages or apps. I have to say the instances of lag or stutter were few and far between, and mostly isolated to instances when there were multiple background processes grinding the engine to stall. But still, I noticed it. Battery life is really impressive, particularly standby time. Although it's only a 2600 mAh battery, it gets through a day's moderate use without breaking a sweat. If you're a light user, using the phone as a daily driver, you might even get 2 days out of it. And then we get onto the camera on the back, and using it is quite frustrating at times. Unless you're in absolutely brilliant daylight, then you are going to struggle taking pictures. Shutter speed and focus times can be slow, and then the results aren't particularly amazing either. Colours are a little washed out, they're not vivid, there's not very much life. But saying that, they can be quite sharp, and colours can be natural at times, but it does depend very heavily on how bright the light is on the scene that you're shooting. Once you get below sort of really bright daylight, then it does struggle, and then you start to see added noise and fuzz, and stuff that generally makes your pictures look a little bit poor. And you can't review an HTC phone without focusing on the sound. And as with any boom sound equipped phone, the stereo speakers are loud. They're immersive too, adding an element to any media experience you don't get from many other phones. I found myself getting sucked into movies I was watching to test the display because of the audio. At the right distance from your face, the stereo really adds that something extra to your visual media. It's certainly much better than any phone with a downward-facing speaker. Earpiece quality isn't stunning though, but then there aren't really that many phones with amazing audio quality through the earpiece anymore. Call quality is clear enough, even if the speaker has a tendency to distort at high volumes. It's hard to argue with the quality of the device when you compare it to how much you actually spend. That is until you realise that the OnePlus One is priced pretty similarly and comes equipped with some really high-end specs and some much better performance in almost every category. But that's not to take anything away from the HTC Desire 820. It's still a great phone from a manufacturer with a growing reputation for quality. I've been Cam, I'm at phonedog_Cam on Twitter. You can follow me on there, ask me any questions, give me suggestions, or use the comments down below. And of course, if you like our videos, don't forget to thumbs them up and subscribe to our channel. And I will see you again soon. I've been Cam, I'm at phonedog_Cam on Twitter. You can follow me, ask me questions, leave your comments and give a clicks up.